Hey guys, it's David from MDBootstrap.com, and in this video we're gonna learn how to build your portfolio. If you watch our previous tutorials, you already know how to build different kind of pages like a landing page or a blog. So it's a high time for you as a web developer to build your portfolio, which is gonna be your resume and which is gonna help you to find your next job, your next customer. So without further ado, let's get started. We're gonna start with downloading MD Bootstrap. So navigate to mdbootstrap.com, go to MDB5 section and download the newest version of MDB from our page. If you want to stay up to date, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter, as you're gonna get all the notification about updates, new version, and so on. And once you download package, just download it and unzip it. Just unzip it and you will be ready to go. So I have my project over here, and this is a starter, which you can see over here. So once you download and unzip the package and open the index.html file, you're gonna see something like that. Other than that, I also prepared myself some images I'm gonna use in this page. You can see them over here in the background, here and over there. And I want to say that I've got these files from unsplash.com, which is a great website where you can get free images, and you can use them in your personal and commercial projects. So really great kudos to all the authors. And by the way, you will find all the links to the images in the source code, because I want to leave the copyright to them as well. Okay, so let's get started. I'm gonna open this one in Visual Studio Code, and we're gonna create this page from scratch. So let's close this one. We're gonna leave this because we will be using MDB5 docs, and let's open this one in the live server. So we'll have a real-time refresh over there. So as soon as we remove something from here, let me do it this full screen. So if I remove, for example, this part, start and your project here, and save the file, it will automatically refresh it. And so that's how we have empty starter over there. Okay, let me go here. Let me close this one so we could see code better, and let's get started. So the first step to build our website is gonna be basic structure. So we're gonna start with a header, main part, and a footer. So let me remind you that since HTML5 we are supposed to use semantic tags. So obviously we could use this using like div and giving this some ID or class name or whatsoever, but that tells you nothing, and this is much more readable. Okay, now once we have our sections ready, obviously we can't see them here yet because they are empty. So let's move to the first stage, to the first component, which is a navbar. So we want to have navbar in our page, which you can see over here, like this one. So let's see how we can get there. If you open documentation, go to navigation and navbar, you're gonna find many examples and detailed docs about how to use navbars. As you can see, there's a whole lot of documentation, so every single option is documented. So let's start with a very basic example. So we're gonna copy this basic example from docs, and we're gonna paste it over here inside our header. Okay, now let's have a look how our navbar looks like. So here already you can see that it's responsive because it collapsed. So on the smaller screen it will collapse like that, but on the full size screen you will have the full navbar expanded. But what we want to do, we don't want this navbar to take, or actually this icons elements to take the full width of the screen, we would like to put it somewhere in the middle, because this is how we're gonna create our page. If you look at this, we try to keep our content within this line here. So we want to leave this margin, because this is this allows us to focus our site on the center, right? We cannot, we are not capable of analyzing content if this is too wide. So in order to change our navbar from full size to centered one, we're gonna change one of the class, which is container. So container fluid, it's a Bootstrap class, and it takes care of the full width. For the container, if we remove fluid, then it will get centered like this. So now it gets centered. And by the way, if you are not familiar with Bootstrap, don't worry, just check the description below this video, where you're gonna find a link to our other tutorial specifically on Bootstrap 5 grid. So don't worry, you can either follow this tutorial, because you're probably gonna understand most of the stuff which I'm gonna explain about the Bootstrap grid, or just pause video here and go and check Bootstrap grid tutorial first, and then come back and continue. Okay, now let's move on. The next step we want to do is we want to place a logo over here instead of this brand text over there. So let's do that now. Let's see how we can do it in a docs. So if you have a full screen, you have this links over here, and you can search for brand, which is describing this part of our navbar. So we can have this navbar as a text, or we can have this one as a logo. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just copy this part from the source code. I'm not gonna copy the entire navbar, I just want this image. And what is important to know in this place, so I'm replacing this brand text with the image. So what is important here is that we are giving a height to our image, because if we're not gonna do that, navbar will automatically scale it to fit the content. So if the image is too big, our navbar also gonna be too big. So we have to change the size to whatever looks good. In your opinion, I think this 30 will look nice and neat. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to get rid of this search, and we want to replace this with icon. So let's again go to the docs and search for icons example. So here it is. Here we have our icons. So again, I'm gonna copy this. It's important to copy this with this not only li elements, but also ul unordered list. So I'm gonna copy all of that, get back to our code, and we want to get rid of this search form. As you can see, this comments helps us to find out what it is. So let's update this one and say this is social icons. It's gonna be social icons once we remove it. So let's get rid of this form and paste our social icons. Let's see if this works. Yeah, now we have icons here. Let's see it on the full screen. Yeah, we have icons over there, but we want to change them. We want to have a real social icons like Facebook, Instagram, and so on. So let's go there. Let's get back to the documentation and let's go to icons. You can use this search tool. So just start typing icons and you're gonna find our icons search. So if you just start typing the name of what you're looking for, let's say Facebook, you can use whichever you like, click on it, and here you will get a code, HTML code to use it. If you click copy, it will get copied to your clipboard. And let's go and replace our icons. So we have this icon here. So we have icon number 1, 2, and 3. So let's replace first one. Let's have a look. So now we have a Facebook, Twitter already, it was there, and let's replace the last one. The last one is a drop down, so we have to remove this one, this entire piece of code, and let's copy paste the one which we already had here. So we're gonna have two Twitters now, and let's change it to, let's say, an Instagram. Copy and replace. And let's have a look. And now we have all our social icons in the navbar ready. Now our navbar is ready, it's a high time to move to the next section, which is intro, which is that part. So let's build this one now. Let's get back to documentation. Let's navigate to navigation and headers, where you're gonna find different headers option. So as you can see, you can have headers like this, that, and so on. And what I'm gonna use this background image. So I'm gonna copy, but I'm not gonna copy the entire header from here. You could do that, but it contains navbar. We already have navbar. So what I want to do, I want just this section, this background image section. So I'm gonna copy this one and paste it still within a header, and this will give me this nice intro heading section. Now let's have a closer look at this code over here for a second. So what you can see here is that we are setting these styles directly in here, and obviously we all know that using inline styles usually isn't a good practice, but in this particular case it's a better way to do it this way rather than using class, because classes by default are reusable, right? But we're not gonna reuse this construction anywhere else. Obviously, if you would like to reuse it somewhere else, like create a component and use it on the multiple pages, then yeah, that's a good call for using classes. But for our case, we want to just do it like that, and we want to set this to even to this height to 500 pixels. Let's replace this default image with one in our image folder for C1 cover 1, and this is how it looks like now. The other interesting thing here is our mask. So we used this mask component, and have a look at this one. If we change this mask consists of two parameters, or actually one RGBA color, which consists of two parameters. One is color, defined by 3 numbers, and the other one is opacity. So if we're gonna change this one, we can change the opacity. Let's have a look how our image will change here. If I'm gonna save it now, you can see it's much lighter now, and we can even change. We can even give it some color mask like this. Oops, maybe a little bit too much, like that. So using the mask, we can change how this image looks like. So we can easily adjust our images using masks. Now, if you want to get more information about masks, just check our docs page over here, because there are multiple different options, and you can even use this gradient mask, which can give you a really amazing effect. So I strongly encourage you to check other options. Okay, let's revert our changes to the previous one. Okay, and now let's fill this part with a proper text and content. Now we want to have 2 buttons, so I'm gonna copy paste this one, and let's change the content to my skills and my portfolio. Now let's stop here for a second and have a look at few interesting components over here, or actually classes. So the first part is this line, where we are using Flexbox to center our content horizontally and vertically. If you had occasion to try center something vertically, you know how big pain that can be. So you can see that using these classes, let's see what's going to happen if I'm going to remove this one. So this class is taking care of alignment in a horizontal position, and this one in a vertical one, right? So if you tried it before, you know that it was very, very difficult to center elements vertically. But with the use of Flexbox, it's fairly easy. So if you're using MDB, you can just use this class, and that's gonna work for you. The other thing is that we are using this text white, and then again, you can check more about these classes in our typography section, which will tell you how to use different attributes, and you can check also color sections, which will give you this insight into different color classes, which allows you to easily change the color of given text like this one. Now, another important part of web development is the spacing. So as you can see, there are already some spacing classes over here, which is like MB3. What does it mean? This stands for margin bottom 3. So if I'm gonna get rid of this one, you're gonna see that this margin will change here. So using MD Bootstrap 5, MDB5, we can easily use the spacing classes, and they works like this, that we can set this margin and padding classes. So you have like M for margin, then you have a direction like B for bottom, T for top, left and right. So you can use any direction. You can use axes. So if you're gonna say MX, it's gonna add margin from on the left and the right side, and you can use values from 1 to 5, which will change value of the margin. So if you go to spacing docs, you're gonna find exactly the exact values. So this is these are the values. So this is what 5 stands for, and here we have explanation for different directions. So for example, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add margin to our buttons. So I'm gonna add margin 1, which means I'm gonna add this margin into all directions, and also want to do this one here. And the reason why is, although at this screen I want this margin just between those buttons, but let's imagine we have another button over here, and we will change our view to some phone, let's say iPhone. So then buttons will collapse one below the other, and without these classes there wouldn't be any margin in between them. So that's why even though on a big screen we can't see that because they are next to each other, we always should keep in mind our spacing also on the mobile devices, and that's why also using these developer tools is very, very crucial in the web development. And I strongly encourage you to get familiar with this one, because you can already see how this web page will look and behave on a mobile device. Okay, let's get rid of this extra button. Now, by the way, I want to give you some good tip for creating your portfolio page. And as you can see, I'm linking here directly my skills and my portfolio, and the reason behind it is because I want to this is something which you should make very, very visible to your potential customers, to your potential clients, to your potential employers, because I see that very often that people, the young developers, they create a section when they talk a lot about them, their hobbies and so on, which is obviously nice to know, but what potential employer is looking for is actually what your skills are and what's your portfolio, because that's what he's looking for you when he want to hire you. So don't do that mistake. Just makes your portfolio very descriptive about you, in the sense that show to everyone what they are looking for. Don't make them to search for it, just show it directly below the main part of the page, or even on the main part of the page. Okay, finally, to polish our intro section, let's add some shadows to it. So in order to add shadow, we're gonna use shadow classes. So we're gonna add it to our div, and we're gonna add shadow 2. But when we use shadow, you can't see it here, we have to use shadow to strong at the end, because since this one is black, you can't even see this shadow here. It's too light, so we have to use the strong option, and this will give us this shadow over here. I hope you can see the difference. Let me remove it for a second, and then add again, so you can see this shadow over here, which gives us this nice look and 3D effect. So our intro is ready. It's working perfectly on different devices. By the way, I didn't mention that we have this nice ripple, this wave effect over here when the customer clicks. So this is also very nice. We have navbar. So let's move to the next section, which is a main section. Now within our main sections, we're gonna have some subsections, which is features, about me, my project, and a contact form. So we're gonna create these 3 sections now. Let's start with the first one. So the first section is features, and I'm using ID because then I'm gonna link these sections into our navbar. So I'm gonna give links which will get me directly to given sections like this. So when I'm gonna click, it will just get me to the proper part of my page. So this is why I'm adding an ID now. And we will be using Bootstrap grid to place our content like here, which, as you can see, will behave differently depending on the screen size. So on a big screen, we have 4 icons next to each other. Then we're gonna have 2 next to each other for the tablets, and on the small screen, they will just nest one below the other, and we're gonna achieve that using Bootstrap grid. So let's do that, but first let's add some comments here, which will help us to understand code once it gets bigger and bigger. Okay, so let's start with a grid. We're gonna put our grid, or actually our container, outside the section, which means that all sections which we're gonna create later, they will be wrapped up with the same container. So I'm gonna use container class, and I'm gonna wrap this section up with this one. Okay, now let's add some heading into our feature section. So I'm gonna use heading 3, and I want use strong to add features, and they will show up over here. Let's switch this one to the normal screen, and then again, just to remind you, this is it's placed over here because our container is centering everything to this line. It's leaving the margin. If we would use fluid, it will just get the full width, but we don't want this one, so that's great. So we have it here. Now what we want to do, obviously we want to center it. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna add class to our section, text center, which will center content over here. And now we want to add some spacing over here. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna just add class to our main part to use my5, so it will add margins to top and bottom. Let's have a look at this one here. So you're looking for main section, and this orange one is our margin from top and the bottom, and it's exactly the same. Okay, now once we have heading, let's move to our grid. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna add row, and inside that row we're gonna add columns. So I'm gonna add column with the size of 3 on the large screens, and we want to add column with the size of 6 on the medium screens, and we want to have 4 divs like this one. And I'm going to show you that in a second why these values are here if you are not familiar with Bootstrap. So now let's get back to docs and let's get back to icons, some things you already know, and we will be looking for some icon which is about speed, because we want to say that we are building very fast website. So I'm gonna use icon over here. Here it is. Now obviously we want this icon to be bigger. In order to make it bigger, we just need to use another class, which is fa now number like 2x, and it will make it extra large. If you want it even bigger, I'm gonna use 3, and this is the correct size. Now I want to change the color. So then again, we learned about color before, so I'm gonna just say text primary. And what is cool about that is this primary color is defined for the entire page. So, you know, if you're gonna use another components like button primary, it will also have exactly the same color, and then you can change this primary color in your CSS, in your Sass files, and this will change and affect the entire page. Okay, now the next thing is an heading. So I'm gonna say fast, and then I'm gonna say p blazing fast load times is my highest priority. Okay, now we need to add some extra spacing over here, so I'm gonna add some margins here, and I also want to add some spacing over here. This class, by the way, this construction says that we want to have this margin bottom on the medium screen size to be 0. And this is because when they set next one below the other, we want to have this margin on the 0, because that basically looks just better. And I'm going to show you that in a second. Okay, so we have our icon ready. Now what we want to do, we want to just create 3 more to have 4 in total. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, our icons are ready now. As you can see here, we are still missing some spacing, so I'm gonna adjust this one by adding this margin only on the medium screen size, which is this one, to 3, and now it looks very, very good. So we are ready to go to the next section, and this next section is gonna be called About Me. Now what we want to do, we also want to add some divider over here, like this line, and we want to add some spacing to this one as well. Okay, let's move to the section About Me. This section will consist of 2 columns. where we're gonna say something about us, give our photo of us, and then we're gonna say what technologies we know. And what is interesting is we're gonna use grid inside the grid, because this is obviously possible with Bootstrap 5. So let's start with the heading. So then again we have h3 strong about me. Then, oops, I made a typo. Oh, I forgot about the section, so let's add section. And let's obviously keep it with inside section. Now, here we have, again, we want to add this class text center to center our content over here. And we want to add some class to that margin. Okay, and now we are ready to add a row and two MD6 columns, which will split our page into two columns. So let's start with the first one on the left side. First, we're gonna add image on the left. Now, to make it round, what we have to do is just to add a single class called rounded circle, and we will get this result. What is important is this image have to be square image, because otherwise if it's not square, if it's rectangular, then we're gonna get oval instead of this circle. So this is something important to keep in mind. Okay, now what we also want to do, we will add some shadow to it. So let's add another class, shadow 1 strong. Now by changing this number, obviously we can change the strength of the shadow, so you can see how does it change, but 1 is sufficient in our case. Okay, now next element is, who's this guy below? We want to add some margin to push it down to the bottom. And now let me paste description. Okay, and what we also want to do, we want to add these icons, and we can find these icons in docs if you start typing icons, but this one we are not going to icons, we are going to buttons, because these are buttons which looks like this social icon. So you can have this social icons like this one, but there are also this available. So I'm gonna copy them, I'm gonna paste it over here, I'm gonna get rid of Google, and here it is. If you prefer other icons option, you can, for example, choose this one. So I'm gonna use these buttons over here, and it looks like this, and we can easily change it looks to a circle by adding this button floating class, which will make them round. So let me remove Google and let me add this class. The other thing is we want to add some spacing over here, so let's just say margin 1. So this will give us some spacing, and now just let's add this one to all three icons here. Okay, so this part is ready. Now we can move to the part on the right side, where we're gonna list our skills. And let's also make a stop here, because I very often see that people, especially the young developers, they're using this, they're checking other portfolios, and they see those portfolios where people say they're using either percentage or stars or bars, like progress bar. So for example, this one, right? But my very good advice as as an employer is, you don't use this, because what does it really mean that you know HTML for 50%? I mean, what kind of tags do you know when you're at 50 or when you're on 70? What does it mean that your JS is for 4 out of 5 star? That tells me nothing, right? I mean, so please don't do that, because this doesn't tell me anything. So that's why we're gonna use something else. What we're gonna say how long we've been using a given technology, which is obviously a much better indicator. Still, I mean, there might be differences, and someone can learn a lot within 1 year, and someone other will take at least 3 years, but this is much better than stars or progress bar. So please do use this kind of stuff, or just put effort in creating your portfolio, because then I will just see with my own eyes what you can really see, what you can really do, what you have created, what you're capable of doing. So please do that, and that's what we're gonna use in this section. So let's move there now. So this is this column, and within this column we're gonna use, as I mentioned before, we're gonna use container, we're gonna use grid inside grid. So let's start with be strong, proficient, 5+ years. So we're gonna start listing our technologies which we've been using for at least 5 years, and we're gonna add row, and we're gonna add call MD4, and we can add margin bottom 4 because we know we're gonna need it. Now let's get back to our icon search. I should have it in a separate windows because I'm using this so often. Let's go for HTML5. Copy this one, paste it over here. Probably it's gonna be too small, yeah, so let's change it to something bigger. You already know how to do it. Let's add some margins. Oops, margin 2, and let's put HTML tag over here. Okay, now let's do it 3 more times. Now, I didn't mention that before, so for someone who doesn't know Bootstrap grid, in a Bootstrap each row can have columns with the size up to 12. So if this column size is 4, we can fit like 3 columns like that. So that's why we always try to add them to sum up to 12. So this is 4. If we want to have 4 columns, that size obviously should be 3, because it would be like 3, 3, 3, and 3, which is 12, obviously. Okay, now let me just quickly change this one. So the second one is CSS3, as far as I can remember. Yes, okay. And the last one was JS, I guess. Yep. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at behavior. So now you can see that at the smaller screen they will look like this one. By the way, we need to add some margin to this one because it's too close. So we can either do it by adding this margin bottom here. Yeah, or we could just add margin to this one. I just choose this one. So let's also add it here for a future. So we'll have margin in the bottom. Okay, so now we have it ready. Let's create remaining icons. Okay, so our icons are ready. Now, as you can see, I added some comments because there is so many code already that I'm getting lost. So I like adding these comments to help me figure out which part I'm changing right now. And as you can see in the last one, we use a little bit different columns because we have just 2 of them, and that's why we use this MD6 instead of MD4, because there are just 2 columns next to each other. So since this part is ready, let's move to the next section, which is my projects. Let's copy paste this one. Let's change section name to my projects. Actually, we could do it like this. Okay, now section with the name projects and class text center. Probably we're gonna use it as we've been doing so far. Let's add heading. Okay, let's add margin. Now, in order to create this section, we're gonna use MDB cards. So then again, if you go to docs, you're gonna find many different card types. So you can use whichever you want. So as you can see, there are a lot of different varieties of cards, so you can use whichever you like. Now let's say we want to have the one with the ripple with this nice effect. So I'm gonna copy this one, and now if I'm gonna paste it over here, it will take the full size. So what we want to do, we want to use grid to make it smaller. So let's do it now. Row, we want to have call LG 4, call MD6, and I'm gonna explain in a second why. And we want to have 3 cards like this. So now I'm gonna paste 3 cards over here. I just use multi-cursor, and let me change this one to 12. So what's happening here? We have this 3 columns. Let me close this card, and that card for you. So we have 3 columns. Each of them has size of 4, LG4, which means that in a huge screen, we're gonna have 3 next to each other, right? It's 4, 4, and 4, which gives 12. But on a medium size screen like this one, so on the tablet, instead of having them like on a mobile device, one below the other, we still have some space. So we're gonna use this trick to have 1 bigger card and 2 smaller ones. So this is because this is 12. This is 12 and this is 6 plus 6. So that's how we have this effect here. And you can already see that we are missing some margins over here. So let's add this one. So we have some spacing over here. Okay, now let's quickly add some content to our pages. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna change the pictures over here. So this is image project 1, image project 2, image project 3. Okay, so now we have this project icon. So let's just quickly change title and description. And finally, we want to change this button text to something like "See Live." And I think our section is ready. So we are ready to move to the next section, which is contact section. So let's create new section. And as always, let's add heading. Let's add row. Let's add some column. This time we have only single column. And let's add some form. I'm gonna show you how we can center this column, because by default these columns are aligned to left, but that's in a second. Before that, let's go to forms, overview, and then again, as always, you have multiple examples of working forms over here. So what you can do, you can just choose which one you like, which one you prefer. Oh, this is already a contact form, so let's just copy this code and let's paste it over here. And as you can see, as I mentioned, it's 6 columns, so it's just taking half of it. Obviously we could use like something like 12 and then it will get the full width. But if you want to make it smaller, what you can do, you can just use this flexbox. So to enable flexbox, we just say deflex, and then we can say justify content center, and this will center our content for us. And now we can change this size to something, to size we want, like 8 or 6, for example. And this will work perfectly for our project. And obviously keep in mind that this is just in front of our HTML contact form, so it doesn't work obviously. But we have another tutorial for you where we teach you how to make this contact form actually working to send email to you. So every time someone fills it, it will send an email to you. So don't forget to check description. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as this is where you're gonna find more tutorials like this. Okay, now let's just polish it. So let's add some margins here, like MY5 to have this distance over here. Maybe it's a little bit, let's have it 3, for example. Actually, you know what, let's do it even something like this. MY5, and now we will have this margin from top and the bottom, so it should be same. Okay, so the last part for today is our footer. So then again, let's get back to docs. Let's go to navigation, footer, and let's search for this very minimalistic one, copyrights. This is all we need for today, and we could use something else like this one, but this one will work for us. So inside the footer section, I'm gonna paste it. So we have this footer here. So the last thing is to fix our links in buttons here and in the navbar. So let me do it now. So what we want to do, we want to get rid of this drop down and disabled. We don't want them, we don't need them. So I'm gonna go find these links. So this is our first link. This is drop down. We don't want drop down here. We're gonna remove this one. We don't want this disabled. We're gonna remove this one. What we need is our home, and we need a couple of links. So we won't have features, about me, my projects, and contacts. So let's do it like this: features, and this is features. This one is about me. So about. So this is corresponding with an ID, right? Which we added to our sections. Like this is section ID features. So this has to correspond with this names. So we have about, then we had projects. So we're gonna add projects here. And the last one is contact. So now if we click to any of this, it will get us to the proper section. And finally, let's add these links to this one. So we have about, And then we have projects, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, my skills. Okay, so our page looks good now. It's ready. It's fully responsive, including different screen size, so it will behave differently on tablets, right, and on the mobile. But what is most important is that it's fully responsive and it will look good on each and every device. Okay, now I want to show you how you can quickly deploy our page. So if you are already an MDB customer, what you have to do is very simple, because what you need to do is just open a command line or terminal on your page, navigate to the folder where your project is created, and just type MDB publish, and this will create a JSON package file for you. You can give a name to this one, so we can say let's say MDB5 landing, that's what we want to call it, and you can accept any default values, and within a second your page will get deployed to the web, and it will be available for everyone. So as you can see, it's already there, it's secured with SSL, so your page is ready. And if you don't have MDB account yet, or if you don't have and you don't have MDB CLI installed, just go to mdbootstrap.com and check our MDB CLI section, where you're gonna find everything about the CLI, or you can check description down below this video because we have a separate tutorial on how to create account MD Bootstrap and how to install MDB CLI, how to use it, because you can do much more than just this simple deployment. And finally, I strongly encourage you to join our Facebook group. You're gonna find the link in the description down below, where you're gonna find a lot of new tutorials, materials, questions, and in case you have any issues, don't hesitate to post it there. I also encourage you to create your version of a portfolio page and post it there, share with others, share with us, and show us what you've built with MDB.